Hey everyone, how's it going? This is my first quote-unquote commentary video, so I feel like some introductions are due. I'm Frosty, and I'm here to talk about webcomics. If you clicked on this video, it's likely because you're an aspiring webcomic creator, or maybe you just have a general interest in the medium, or maybe you're actually using this video to trace my IP address and mail me a pipe bomb. No matter the reason, if you're interested in webcomics, you've come to the right video. For some context on my experience with Webtoon and webcomics as a whole, I uploaded my first episode of my action-adventure comic, Sword of Arcadia, on Webtoon Canvas in July 2020. It was, interesting, to say the least. I posted bi-weekly episodes with the story for about 3 years until last April, when I decided to archive the current draft and put the whole thing on an indefinite pause. Now, I can already hear the questions. Why would you stop working on the story after 3 whole years of maintaining it? Isn't that a waste of time? And to be completely honest, I was just really unhappy with the story as a whole. My writing, my scheduling, my art direction, all of it made me feel pretty terrible, and I started to lose my passion for the story I used to obsess over. So I decided to scrap what I currently had and start again, rewriting the story from the ground up. Even after hearing all that, you might still be asking, but don't you regret giving up those 3 years you spent? And to that I say, not really. Don't get me wrong, 3 years is a really long time to work on something. But, and hear me out on this one, it is also a really long time to learn something too. And learning, in my humble opinion, is one of the most valuable things you can get out of, well, everything, pretty much. In this video, I'm going to discuss some of the biggest things I learned from making my first webtoon, and my hope is that my experience finds a way to help you with whatever you're making too. Okay, intro aside, I have about 7 points here. I'll be getting all the negative coded points out the way first, so we can end on a happy note. But yeah, the first 4 points are going to be hard-hitting truthers, starting with number 1. The advice about not starting with your biggest project was definitely right. If you've ever watched any video titled something like, "What to know before starting a webcomic," then you've heard this point before. I've heard this point a million times before. If you haven't heard this piece of advice though, it essentially waters down to the idea that when you're getting ready to make a webcomic for the first time, you should avoid starting with your best story at all costs, because you likely won't succeed. And, as much as it sucks to admit this, I absolutely should have listened. Look, I'm not saying that making Sword of Arcadia my first webcomic was a mistake, per se. It was the only story that existed in my brain at the time, rotating around constantly like a rotisserie chicken. But, heavy emphasis on the but, my first draft was a 200,000 word love letter to my first D&D campaign, packed full of intense action scenes, visually complex magic, and hard-hitting themes that could only be expressed through finite visuals. The expectations I had going into the creation of the story were high, way higher than I could have ever expected to achieve. This is because all of my artistic energy was going towards figuring out how to make a webcomic in the first place. Getting used to the formatting processes and the tight-knit schedule took a lot of time and packed a lot of stress on my shoulders. That led me to cut a few corners, which led me to make a few mistakes, and next thing you know, 3 years later, I was dealing with a project that I was ultimately disappointed in. I sort of imagine it like throwing a lanky-limbed child into a really deep pool that's also infested with sharks. But seriously, if I had taken the time to create a shorter, less complex story before jumping right into the deep end, then Sword of Arcadia would have had a better, more successful start. At the very least, I wouldn't have had to spend hours navigating complex software and formatting. On to number 2. When making characters for your comic, you need to think harshly about their design. That includes making elaborate references. You know what's the most annoying part about making a comic when you don't have the proper references for your characters? Scrambling to make up details that you forgot to mark on the references and to keep them consistent. Webcomics are composed of hundreds to thousands of panels. Even in the 30 episodes I made for my first draft, I ended up drawing the same characters over and over and over again to the point where I could draw most characters without needing to glance at the references. This is a conditional lie. And what did these references look like? This. These are perfectly fine on their own. Most people can work with this on solo illustrations and whatnot. But when I was making SOA, my daily battle was, oh, how do I draw Michael's hair to side profile again? What color of magic does Jackie use? How many scars does Morris have on his arms? What color am I actually using for Ashton's hair? It was a nightmare. Genuinely, not having the references I needed wasted me hours of time. And that's not even mentioning that the designs had little to no accuracy to the time period and genre in the first place, but whatever. When I made a character with annoyingly complex armor and hair that I hated to draw, did I stop for 1 second to think that I would have to draw this annoyingly complex armor and hair 100 times, and that was the way this character looked for the very long foreseeable future? Not at all. But now I know that you seriously have to think ahead. Yeah, it would be cool to give my main character a 12-layer outfit with 17 different shades of one blue and intricate ornamental patterns, but that's not a realistic expectation to put on myself when I have to draw that outfit a million times. In the case for webcomics and animation, simplicity is your friend. Take advantage of that. The third thing I learned is burnout, unlike simplicity, is your biggest enemy. Remember earlier when I said that I posted episodes for my comic bi-weekly for 3 years? I lied to your face, like, violently. Let me break down the actual timeline of uploads that occurred. Starting in July of 2020, I uploaded episodes bi-weekly until May, which was about 20 episodes give or take. After that, I took a little break until August. I posted 2 episodes in August, nothing in September, 1 episode in October, none in November, 1 episode in December and January combined. Then a grand total of 4 episodes were posted in all of 2022. I put my final episode out in April of 2023. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I am pretty sure that it's safe to say that my upload rank shrank pretty exponentially. The main contributor to my steady downfall was the creature that haunts all artists and academic students everywhere, burnout. When I started the story, I thought that I would be immune to dealing with burnout. I was hyper-fixated on my characters, and truly nothing can stand against the power of my autism. And for like a year, I was an unstoppable force. And then burnout hit me like a bullet train. Now, there's not really some grand cure to burnout, but there are ways to circumvent it that would have helped me maintain a better posting record had I not jumped the gun and got too excited. Things like a healthy work-life balance, proper breaks between story sections, other projects to focus on, months worth of backup episodes. But nope, I didn't have any one of those things. I just had pure adrenaline, which, to its name, quickly burned out. Working on any long-lasting project puts you in the shoes of Sisyphus, forever destined to push a massive-ass boulder up a hill until it slips from your grasp and you're forced to pick it up over and over again. Now that I know that, I feel like I can better prepare for it. I should at least set up some damage control. On to point number 4. Do not start your story with the expectation that you'll gain popularity, even if you network. Comics are meant to be read. They are meant to be experienced. That is literally the basis of their creation. It's no surprise that when I started SOA, I had the dream of one day having a massive fan base who loved the characters as much as I did, and could recognize the amount of work that I put in. Hell, I still dream of a world where I could get some sort of movie adaptation, or where animation studios are banging at my door, begging for the rights to my work, like how Amazon Prime swept up Hazbin Hotel into their grubby little hands. But let's look at this with the scope of realism for a moment. For 99.999% of writers out there, that just isn't gonna happen. I don't mean to squash any dreams, it's just that there's way too many comics out there and not enough people with the interest to read them. And that's okay. I think a big part of my burnout that led me to falling out of touch with Sword of Arcadia was the fact that I wasn't seeing the follower growth that reflected the work I put into each panel. I was so desperate for that Webtoon fame that I even signed up networking. I went to indie conventions, had a folder of Webtoon-related Discord servers, found mutuals on social media platforms to support. But ultimately, even after years of doing that, I hadn't even reached triple digits on the amount of subscribers I had. And I think this brings a lesson that can be applied to way more than just writing careers. I think with any career that involves reliance on other people's attention, it's important to remember that fame is finite. If it wasn't, then popularity would have no value to begin with. And it's okay to make art just to make it. Reflecting on my past work, I've realized that the value I derive out of my story does not come from the quantity of people who see it, but instead the few who retain value from it. Even me. Okay. Let's move away from the more negative points now. Yeah, there were a lot of harsh lessons that I learned making SOA, whatever, but there were some really amazing things I learned that restored my faith in humanity and the arts just a little bit too. Starting with, making a webcomic is a great way to find friends and gain wonderful connections. I want to start this point by clarifying that there is a distinct difference between creating popularity and creating connections. The normal expectation when you gain popularity is that the audience you create exists to enjoy your work. There is a lack of real personal relationship, or at least there should be. We do not condone parasocial relationships on this channel. Meanwhile, connections are different. Connections are genuine. Whether it's through means of business or shared interest, creating connections comes naturally when you put your webcomic out in the world. I've made some wonderful lifelong friends who found me through Sword of Arcadia. Some of them even appear on my streams. I think this is the most valuable thing I've gained out of starting my webcomic, because ultimately, if you care about what you're putting out in the world, then you're guaranteed to find at least one person who also cares. And it's really awesome. And, as it turns out, two people who care about the same things have a high chance of becoming friends, and we all love making friends. At least to an extent, right? Shout out to all the people who met me through PromoCon and stuck with me after all these years. And kudos to those of you who are grinding away at their own passion projects. Keep thugging it out over there. On to point number 6. Webcomics bring amazing growth and improvement to your art. Dude, seriously, do not sleep on this point. You want to develop all aspects of your art and become a well-rounded artist? Make a webcomic. It's as simple as that. Now, I know that art growth comes naturally over time, whether or not you make a comic, but the growth you experience when drawing the same character hundreds of times over is incomparable. Here, look at the difference in my art in just 1 year. Literally everything improved, from quality of lines to anatomy to backgrounds. Was it a pain in the ass to have to struggle with the things I didn't know how to draw? Yes, absolutely yes. But it clearly paid off. It is so rewarding to look back a few months and see that all of your methods have not only become better, but more effective and time-saving. Also, it is entertainingly painful to look back at your old comic panels too, which can be a plus if you like clowning on yourself. There is nothing that has tested the extremes of my artistic ability like making a webcomic. And you can literally see this in other stories, not just mine. Seriously, look at the first episode in any webtoon that has been posting consistently and compare it with the newest episode. The growth is real, boys, and webcomics are fertilizer for your art ascension. And finally, I've left the most important point for last, because I'm awesome, and that is, you can always try again. The greatest news about any form of art is that nothing is truly permanent. You don't like the way you painted that cat for your grandmother's birthday? Repaint over the canvas. You really don't like that vocal sample you used for your latest song? Re-record it. You don't like the direction your webcomic is going? Start over. Yeah, naysayers will say that everything on the internet is permanent and yada yada yada, but that doesn't have to mean shit if you don't want it to. You are the driver of your own story. You get to choose what road to take with it. I think I was stuck in the idea that I just have to push through with what I had for SOA, that it would get better. I forced myself to make episodes of my current draft, all the while dreaming in the background of the timeline where I could have possibly started over and made things better, not realizing that there was nothing holding me back from making that a reality. And I'm so glad I eventually came to that realization, even if it took me a really long time. Because yes, I spent 3 whole years making a webcomic that I gave up on. But that webcomic was ultimately something that I didn't like, so why make a big deal out of it? I had a choice to make. Spend years of my life standing my ground and forcing myself to create something that didn't live up to the expectations I knew I could achieve, or take a step back, rewrite, and come back stronger than ever with 3 years of experience under my belt, a community of support, and a newfound passion for my art. Once I realized my choices, it wasn't a difficult decision to make at all. But yeah, those are the things I've learned from making a webtoon. I hope that my overly simplified explanation of my experience offers you some help in whatever art journey you may be taking in the future. I'm looking to make more commentary style videos like this in the coming months, not just talking about webtoon, but also about art in general and whatever tickles my fancy. If this is your kind of thing and you'd like to offer me some support, consider hitting the subscribe button and turning notifications on so you'll know when I've cooked up something absolutely fantastic. Also, if you subscribe, you'll get to keep an eye on the progress of my aforementioned rewritten comic, whose revival is just around the corner. I'm almost done with my second draft, and I'll be gunning to get it out by the end of the year. Be prepared. I am writing the next One Piece. Anyways, outros, am I right? Good luck in your adventures, smoke ass, eat grass, and I'll see you in my next video. Have a good one.